I've always believed that a highway at night has its own heartbeat. Not the aggressive rhythm of daytime traffic, not the sharp impatience of city lights, but a slower, deeper pulse. Something steady, something quiet, a living silence, if that makes sense. I've spent a lot of my life inside that silence. Been driving trucks across the states for just about 14 years now. Long enough to know the difference between being tired and being on the edge of something else entirely. There's fatigue, and then there's that sleep hunger that feels like your body is no longer yours, like your mind's somewhere 3 steps behind your hands. This story is about the kind of tired that makes the world shift around you. It was late autumn when it happened. Nights were getting longer, and mornings didn't really feel like mornings. They felt like evenings that never quite ended. I had a long-haul load, refrigerated goods, dairy mostly, set to deliver from Nevada to northern Illinois. Tight schedule, tighter than I liked. Dispatch told me a second driver was supposed to be assigned for team driving, but something fell through. Budget cuts, sudden changes. They said I was still good to run solo. I should have pushed back. I should have said no. But you know how it is. Some habits get wired into you. Keep the wheels turning. Keep the load on time. Keep the reputation clean. I fueled up outside Reno that evening. The sun was dropping behind the desert hills, throwing long shadows over the parking lot. I remember leaning against the side of my truck, coffee in hand, watching the sky fade into that hazy gray blue. A few other drivers were lingering outside their cabs, stretching, smoking, rubbing stiff shoulders. The kind of silent acknowledgement spoken only by the eyes. Long road tonight? Yeah, me too. I'd slept poorly the night before. Not even slept, more like drifted in and out of something that didn't feel restful. A motel bed that smelled like lemon cleaner and stale air. A buzzing refrigerator that never turned off. I think I got maybe 2 hours? Maybe. Still, I got behind the wheel. Because that's what I do. Leaving the city, the road opened into miles of nothing. The desert is strange at night. It's vast, sure, but it doesn't feel empty. There's a fullness to the silence, like there are things out there, just waiting beyond the glow of the headlights. Dry wind blowing across sand and sage. Telephone poles stretching into the dark like ribs of an ancient skeleton. Sometimes, driving alone long enough, you start to feel like the whole world has narrowed down to the dashboard lights and the sound of tires on asphalt. Hours passed like scenery I'd barely noticed. And I had that feeling, that creeping heaviness behind the eyes. The one every truck driver knows. The one we joke about, but shouldn't. My coffee wasn't doing much. I'd already gone through 1 thermos. The caffeine buzz had climbed and fallen, leaving that shaky hollowness in its wake. I rolled the window down, let the cold desert air slap against my face. It woke me up for maybe 2 minutes, maybe less. The CB was mostly quiet, just the occasional crackle of voices from drivers miles ahead or behind. I tried music, then silence, then talk radio, then silence again. Nothing sat right. I kept glancing at the clock, kept calculating distance and arrival time in my head, kept telling myself, just 1 more hour, then I'll pull off. Just 1 more stretch. I'll rest at the next stop. I'll stop after the next ridge, after the next town, after the next sign. But the next always moved. That's how fatigue works. It lies to you. Softly, gently, convincingly. The road began to blur, not in a dramatic way, no sudden sway or drift. Just that quiet smudging where the world loses sharpness, like the edges were dissolving into mist. I remember blinking, long blinks, the kind that feels suspiciously close to sleep. At some point, I realized I couldn't remember the last 10 miles. Not what song was playing, not what the last sign said, not even if I'd passed any other vehicles. Just blank space. That's when I felt the first hint of fear. Not panic, just a subtle thread of unease curling in my chest. I adjusted my posture, sat up straighter, rolled my shoulders, but my body felt heavy, too heavy, like it belonged to someone else. I whispered to myself, because sometimes talking aloud helps. Come on, man. Focus. You're fine. Just stay with it. And then, like some kind of scene pulled quietly out of the dark, I saw lights ahead. A rest area. Faded, old, barely lit. My chest loosened. Relief washed through me. I'll stop. I'll sleep. Even an hour. Just an hour. I flicked on my turn signal. The click, click, click echoed in the cab. But then something stupid happened. A thought. A single, small, poisonous thought. If you stop now, you'll be late. You'll break schedule. You'll look unreliable. Just keep going a little longer. I turned the wheel back to center. The rest area passed by, and as those dim lights disappeared in my mirror, I felt something like regret. Something slow and sinking. But the truck kept rolling. The engine kept humming. The road laid itself out before me, endless and indifferent. I didn't know it yet, but that moment, that decision to keep going, was the start of everything that followed. The silence grew heavier. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the dark, and my eyelids, they felt like they were made of stone. I don't remember closing them. I just remember a dream, not a full dream, just a fragment. A warm room, a bed, soft light, a feeling of floating, like sinking into something safe. But then, the truck lurched. My eyes snapped open. The rumble strip was growling beneath me. The whole cab shuddered. I jerked the wheel. The trailer swung, but stabilized. My heart was pounding. My hands were trembling. I'd fallen asleep. Not for seconds, long enough to drift. I could have killed someone, killed myself, taken out a family, another driver, anyone. The weight of that settled like cold iron in my chest. And yet, the road stretched on, and I still wasn't done, because this was only the beginning. There's a point the body reaches where exhaustion stops feeling like tiredness and becomes something else entirely. It becomes a presence, like someone quietly sitting beside you. Not threatening, not loud, just there. That's what it felt like as I continued through Utah, cutting across I-80 while the night stretched on like a ribbon with no end. The moment with the rumble strip had woken me up, but only in the way cold water wakes up someone who's already freezing. It shocks you, jolts your nerves, forces a few sharp breaths through your lungs. But the core, the deep part of you, that stays tired, bone tired. I kept telling myself I should have stopped, should have turned around, should have done anything but keep driving. But the schedule hung in my mind like a hook. It's strange how this job can mold your thinking. Sleep, safety, even common sense sometimes end up ranked below delivery windows. Not because we don't know better, but because there's always something at stake. Reputation, pay, standing with dispatch, future runs. You learn to eat tiredness like bread. And that night, I was starving for rest. Hours passed in silence. I didn't want music anymore. Didn't want voices on the radio. The quiet felt safer, in a way. I needed my mind still. I needed every remaining bit of attention to stay anchored to the road. But the silence did something else too. It made me remember memories I hadn't thought about in years. You spend enough time alone with the hum of the engine, and your mind wanders down roads you didn't plan on traveling. I thought about my father. He was the one who got me into trucking. He'd driven for over 30 years. Old school guy, The kind of driver who could fix a radiator leak with duct tape and a prayer and somehow make it to the destination early. He told stories about the road like it was a living creature, something that could love you or swallow you whole depending on how you treated it. But he also used to say this: the most dangerous thing on the highway ain't the weather, ain't the drunks, ain't the traffic. It's a tired driver who thinks he can push just one more hour. He used to tap the side of his head when he said it, too. Your brain will lie to you before your wheels ever do. I didn't really understand that when I was younger. I thought tired was tired. Just drink coffee, roll the window down, play music. It wasn't until later, much later, I learned what he meant. Because tiredness isn't just a lack of sleep. It's a drifting, a slow loosening of the threads that hold your mind to reality. And that's what started happening. Slowly, softly, almost gracefully, the road signs began to blur slightly around the edges. The headlights formed halos rather than beams. Objects in the distance didn't look like objects. They were shapes, silhouettes, impressions. The lines on the road began to pulse. Not move, pulse. Like the highway itself had a heartbeat. My own breath felt slow, heavy. I kept forcing my eyes open wider, as if that alone could fight off the weight inside them. I opened the window again. Cold air rushed in, sharp, biting, brutal. It helped, for a little while. Then the warmth of the cab slowly folded back around me, and the heaviness returned, heavier this time. My body wanted sleep. My mind wanted sleep. Every cell inside me begged for it. But my hand stayed on the wheel. And that was the dangerous part. Because this wasn't a struggle anymore. This was survival in slow motion. Somewhere near the Wyoming line, I saw something strange. It was a rest stop, small, old, barely lit, just like the last one. Same faded asphalt. Same flickering street lamp. Same arrangement of picnic benches and vending machines. It looked familiar. Too familiar. For a moment, I wondered if I'd driven in a loop. If I'd somehow missed an exit. If I was so tired the miles had folded on themselves. I blinked. Hard. My brain felt thick, foggy. I checked the GPS straight line. No turns. No loops. But the rest stop looked the same. Exactly the same. I slowed down as I passed it, staring at the shadowed shape of it in my mirror. And just like before, I didn't pull in. Not because I didn't want to. I desperately wanted to. But the schedule pulled at me again. The invisible hand. The silent command. Keep going. Keep going just a little longer. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. At that point, time had loosened too. The world had become just the tunnel of headlights and the soft hum of tires. Then something else began to happen. I started seeing movement where there wasn't any. A shadow shifting just beyond the reach of the lights. A shape near the guardrail that disappeared when I tried to focus on it. The suggestion of someone standing beside the road. Not detailed, not clear. More like the idea of a person. The kind of thing a mind creates when it's slipping into dreams while still awake. And the worst part? I wasn't scared. I was too tired to be scared. There was a numbness behind everything. A quiet acceptance. Like if the world had turned upside down at that moment. I would have just blinked slowly and said, okay. My hands were still on the wheel. My foot still pressed the accelerator. My eyes still faced forward. But I wasn't really there. I was drifting. I was driving on a memory of myself. Then came the hallucination. A real one. Because this time, I didn't just see something vague. I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. Not beside me, but just behind the seat, in my peripheral vision. The shape of a person leaning forward. A silhouette. Still. Quiet. Watching the road with me. I didn't look directly at them. Because I knew, some part of me knew, that if I turned my head fully, the illusion would break. So I kept looking forward and said aloud, in a voice that barely sounded like mine, "I know you're not real." There was no answer, but the presence didn't go away. Instead, I felt something like understanding. Not words, not spoken, just a quiet message. Stop, now, before something breaks. A tear ran down my cheek, not because I was sad, just because I was tired beyond the point of holding anything together. My vision blurred, and for the first time since I'd passed the first rest stop, my foot came off the accelerator. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slow release. I guided the truck toward the shoulder. Hazards on, engine idling. The road hummed under the tires as they rolled to a stop. The silence after was enormous. I sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, breathing shallow and slow, eyes burning. The passenger seat was empty again. The hallucination, the presence, the shadow, the dream, it was gone. And then I realized something. If I hadn't stopped just then, at that exact moment, my eyes would have closed again. And maybe that time, they wouldn't have opened in time to stop the truck. I could have crossed the median, hit another vehicle, flipped, slid, burned. I could have died. Or worse, taken someone else with me. The weight of that sat on my chest like a concrete block. I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from truth. I had pushed too far, and the road had nearly taken me for it. I climbed into the sleeper, didn't even lay out a blanket, didn't take off my boots, just collapsed onto the mattress. And sleep took me instantly. Not gently, not comfortably, just total blackness. A shutdown. When I woke again, it was daylight, bright, shining through the cab windows like a spotlight. My mouth was dry, my back stiff, my head fogged but clearer than before. I sat up slowly and felt the weight of what had nearly happened settle into me for real. This wasn't just a close call. This was a line crossed. A quiet, dangerous line that too many drivers pretend isn't real until it is. Waking up in that sleeper berth felt like surfacing from deep water. There wasn't relief in it. No clean, refreshed clarity. Just a quiet heaviness. The kind that comes when your body finally got what it needed, but your mind is still catching up to what almost happened. The daylight outside was sharp, too bright, the kind of morning light that makes everything feel exposed. I reached for the thermos beside the bed. Empty. Of course it was. So I got myself upright, stepped down from the sleeper, and sat in the driver's seat for a moment without starting the engine. Just breathing, letting the hum of the idling world outside settle around me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. Not like someone was with me. Nothing supernatural, nothing strange. But like the memory of that shadow in the passenger seat had left something behind. A reminder, not of fear, but of how thin the line is. The line between awake and asleep. Between control and drift. Between life continuing and life ending quietly in the dark. I reached forward and rested my palm on the steering wheel. It felt warm, like the truck itself was something alive. Then I heard my father's voice, not like a hallucination, just a memory resurfacing clean. If you're too tired to remember the mile you just drove, you're already not driving anymore. You're just moving, and moving can kill you. I had always thought I understood that, but now I knew it, in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I started the truck and eased back onto the road. No engine roar, no rush. Just steady forward motion. The highway in daylight was a different world. What had been endless black and ghost shapes was now open stretches of pale desert, brush, rock, sky. Nothing mystical, nothing strange, just the landscape for what it was. But something in me had changed. I watched the road differently now. Not like a path I had to conquer or a distance I needed to burn through. More like something I had to respect. I drove for maybe 45 minutes before I pulled into a truck stop. A real one this time, not a fading, lonely rest area. Diesel pumps, loud engines, truckers walking with coffee cups and tired eyes. The usual morning scene. I parked, cut the engine, sat for a second longer, letting silence settle. Then I climbed down and walked into the diner section. The air smelled like eggs, bacon grease, burnt toast, and the faint trace of cheap coffee spilled into decades-old carpet. A familiar smell, a comforting one. I slid into a booth. No menu. Didn't need one. The waitress already knew the look in my eyes. Just nodded and said, "Long night." I exhaled through a tired smile. Yeah, something like that. She poured the coffee. Dark, bitter, the kind that stands up straight in a cup. And I sat there holding it with both hands. Around me, drivers came and went. Some talking, some silent, some laughing louder than the situation called for. But all of them had the same thing behind their eyes. The wait, the distance, the hours. She came back a few minutes later, towel over her shoulder, pin tucked behind her ear. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. I huffed a small laugh. Not quite. Just almost saw the end of myself, I think. She didn't look surprised. In this place, nobody would be. "That highway'll do that," she said simply. Then she pointed to a sign taped on the wall, handwritten and fading. "Drowsy driving is still driving drunk. Except the bottles, just missing." I stared at that for a long time. Longer than someone should stare at a sign that simple. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was just true. I thought back to the hallucination, the person I thought I saw beside me. Not some ghost or spirit or omen. Just my mind fighting to stay awake. Fighting to keep me alive in the only language it had left. Your brain will try to wake you any way it can, even if it has to scare you. Even if it has to invent someone to sit beside you. That's how far we can push ourselves. Too far. I finished the coffee, then ordered breakfast. Eggs, sausage, toast. The kind of meal that brings a body back into itself. And while I ate, I watched the trucks roll in and out. The endless motion of the job. The quiet sacrifices woven into every mile. I had always thought exhaustion was a weakness, something to beat, something to fight past. But that night taught me something I should have known from the beginning. Sleep isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement. If your body needs it, it will take it, whether you're ready or not, whether you're safe or not, whether you're in a bed or behind the wheel of 40 tons of steel and momentum. And when it takes it at the wrong time, the cost isn't just yours. It could belong to anyone. I called dispatch later that morning, told them I'd be late. They weren't happy, made that clear, but I didn't explain myself, didn't justify, didn't apologize, because I knew what the alternative could have been. A wreck, a funeral, a headline, a family waiting for someone who wasn't coming home. Late delivery was nothing next to that. The rest of the drive was quiet, calm, steady. I made more stops than usual. Slept when I needed to. Ate when I needed to. Didn't push. And the road didn't push back. Because the road doesn't care whether you arrive or don't. It doesn't challenge you, or test you, or demand you prove yourself. It simply is. It's you who chooses how to travel it. And that was the realization waiting for me at the end. Trucking isn't about endurance, or toughness, or proving how far you can go without rest. It's about respect for the road, for the machine, for the body that guides it, for the lives around you. and for your own life, too. Even if you sometimes forget to count it. I still drive, still haul loads across states, across seasons, across nights where the stars feel close enough to touch. But when I'm tired now, truly tired, I stop. No matter the schedule, no matter the pressure, no matter the deadline. Because I learned something on that long, lonely stretch of highway. You don't become a better driver by pushing harder. You become a better driver by knowing when to rest. And sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is simply pull over and close their eyes. That's where my story ends tonight. If you'd like to hear more from the road, hit subscribe and rest easy, my friend.